Hello, everybody. Welcome. So we're going to be waiting for people to arrive, and when we do, you just get yourselves comfortable because it's going to be an amazing book launch. All right, so I'll introduce myself in the evening. My name is Debbie Magwood. I'm the Executive Director and founder of the West Island Cancer Wellness Center, who is the recipient of all the generous donations coming from the book. How the evening's going to go is what I'm going to first ask you to do is make sure that you are seeing me and only me right now. So which means you're in the presenter view.
Yes.
Okay, do you only see me?
Yes.
Right. That way, you will be seeing only the person who's presenting, and you'll have all your attention on that person. So again, you're going to be looking to put it in the presenter mode, which is usually in the upper right-hand corner of your PC, or in the lower left if you're using like an iPad or something like that. Okay. The next special request that I am going to ask is that you remain muted for most of the event. If you have any questions, I'm going to ask you to go down to the chat, which is on the bottom row. You'll see like a black row underneath my face, and you'll see the word chat. You'll click on that, then you'll pick the name Natalie, and then you will send your chats directly to her. Natalie, through cyber wonderfulness, will be sending me your questions, and I will be asking them to the person that you are wanting to know the question from. So after the speaker speaks, if you have any questions, you might want to say, Debbie, I would like to know from Debbie, whatever that is. Okay, is everybody clear? Can I have some thumbs up? Thumbs up, excellent. Okay, this evening there's 90 people registered to celebrate the beautiful book, We Root, We Leaf by Rachel Devins. So we're just going to start this little evening out by, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Cancer Wellness Center. Then I'm going to tag it over to Susan to talk about her family. Then to Regina, who's going to talk about the wonderful support system that was set up for Rachel. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the community support, and that's going to be Reham. And then we're going to find out a little bit about a fundraiser from FluVog, and that's when Anthony's going to jump in and talk to you. Then Bonnie's going to give us a little history on the book and how it came to be. And then after that, we have our esteemed guest, our award-winning poet, Lorna Crozier, who's going to give us a reading from the book. Then we'll do a little thank you, and then we'll end off the evening with a little bit of Q&A. And then when all that is over and done with, what we're going to do is we're going to open up the floor for people to share their feelings about the book or a memory that they have of Rachel. And then our evening will come to a beautiful end. All right. So I see we have almost everybody in now. Looking at your faces, that's amazing. So I'm going to start off and just give you a little bit of information about the Cancer Wellness Center. So the Cancer Wellness Center is about 14 years old, and it's designed to provide psychosocial or cancer wellness support for those living with cancer. And the whole world of cancer wellness, or what's included in the world of cancer wellness, are many pillars of care. So We help people with their physical needs, so physical comfort, pain relief, symptom management, nutrition. We help with informational needs by providing resources out to the community. Psychological and emotional needs by helping people take care of their emotional well-being. Social supports, spiritual needs like hope, belonging, purpose in life. Practical needs, like daily living issues, homemaking, financial assistance, and even help with funeral preparations. And then we also help out with systemic needs, so helping people navigate the medical system. Everything that we do at the Cancer Wellness Center has science behind it. There's empirical research. So if somebody comes in and they're experiencing, let's say, pain, we might recommend that they do reflexology. We might recommend that they do take some nutritional training or gentle exercise or yoga, because all these things have been proven to have an impact on the lives of people going through cancer. Just to give you a little clearer idea of what the Cancer Wellness Center is about, I'm just going to show you a little 2-minute video. Over to Bonnie for the video.
The day I was diagnosed with cancer is a day I'll never forget. My head was swimming with so many questions, worries, and fears. Sure, I was assigned a very capable medical team to treat the disease, but my needs were so much more than physical, and I wasn't the only one affected. I could see how my diagnosis was upsetting my whole family and everyone who loved me. It had turned our worlds upside down. We needed help. Luckily, that's when we found out about the West Island Cancer Wellness Center. The center was created to offer a whole-person approach to cancer wellness. Their team of professionals worked together to address my spiritual, emotional, and physical needs, and to help me and my family learn how to live well with cancer. The West Island Cancer Wellness Center offers a ton of free programs, including yoga, fitness classes, meditation, nutritional cooking, Tai Chi, counseling, massage therapy, and so much more. Through these programs, I learned how to find strength and feel less anxious, depressed, and isolated. What's more, I discovered ways to improve my quality of life, even beyond my cancer journey. If you or someone close to you has been diagnosed with cancer, I urge you to find out more about the West Island Cancer Wellness Center today.
So next, I'm just going to tell you that all of our services that we offer, and of which we have about 2,500 hours of programming every month, we offer completely free, because we have an incredible fundraising team that are behind the scenes making it all possible. So your generosity this evening and the generosity of the friends and family who created this book in sending the proceeds over to us is greatly appreciated. So next, I'm going to send this over to Susan to speak some words about the family.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm Susan, the middle of the 3 Devins girls, and I live in Edmonton. So I'd like to speak on behalf of the Devins family. My mother, Miriam, my older sister, Carolyn, and myself. While many of you knew Rachel, it's the perspective from childhood through her teenage years as a young adult and later grown-up mother that we would like to share. Even as a little child, Rachel was extremely intelligent, with an inquisitive mind and a very vivid imagination. Her imaginary friend, Kurtzy Lonachuk, had a big part in our family, and Kirsty was the one in trouble when she didn't clean her room or do her household chores. Rachel also had her own language and associations. Anything that was light brown, she called gravy. She had a strong sense of self and a wonderful flair for fashion. She was never afraid to give her own opinion, her ideas, wear what she wanted, and look how she wanted. Rachel embraced diversity in her life and the lives of others too. She saw a common humanity. True to our family values, she was resourceful, persistent, and very determined. She knew from an early age what was right and what was fair. And she worked for equity at every opportunity. She had an affinity for justice and a solid moral compass. That helped her champion those less able, less fortunate, or less assertive. I recall an experience one summer. Rachel and I both worked for a multicultural immigrant refugee day camp called Discovery. We worked also with a wonderful counselor, Salandria. On the opening day of camp, Rachel sat at the registration table and listened to the stories and experiences of each parent accompanied by their children and reasons why their children should be in the day camp. That line stretched out the door and around the corner, and Rachel listened with such respect and an intense, undivided attention. Rachel didn't leave till early evening, long after the other staff left, and it wasn't until each person and every application was processed. I know she didn't sleep much that night because she was reviewing every story in her mind. And it was these very strengths that served her well as a dedicated and passionate instructor and consultant in the field of organizational development. Rachel found joy in helping her students reflect and develop. Her work was truly transformative. This inner strength also helped her overcome her own fears. It gave her the courage to step up and take on projects that other people would have found daunting. Whether that was teaching English in Japan, becoming a stepmom to 5 boys, or fighting cancer and founding the charity Project Rock and Locks to distribute fabulous wigs to people experiencing hair loss from cancer. Rachel had a wicked sense of humor, the kind that would have you crying and holding your sides from laughing. She loved to create 4-letter acronyms like FFSP. That stands for Frozen Flying Squirrel Position, and that's the term she used to describe the position required for her radiation treatments. And there is a flying squirrel in Nagano, Japan. On one occasion, Rachel was around 8. I was about 13. We were home alone and I was babysitting. Early in the evening, Rachel said she wasn't feeling too well and was going to go to her room to lay down. A short while later, I heard, "Suze, Suze." So I went to her room to see what was going on. She had pulled a nylon stocking over her head, and when I entered the room, she bolted and sat up and went, "Ah!" And I screamed so loud, I think people 3 blocks away heard. And then we started laughing and laughing. Rachel was also a very sensitive person, which helped her later in life to be compassionate and connect with people at a deep level. Family was so important to her, and she was happiest when surrounded by the people she loved. She was particularly close to our maternal grandmother, and age just didn't matter. Once she advised our elderly grandmother, Oma, that handstands or cartwheels would be a good cure for neck pain. And she even demonstrated for Oma. Rachel loved being a mother. Maybe it was because it allowed her nurturing self free reign. Maybe because it allowed her to be silly and have fun. It was a long dream of hers to have her writing published. And now this dream is being realized. Throughout her cancer journey, Rachel and the whole extended family benefited from a caring and strongly supportive network of friends, neighbors, and colleagues. Her community, lovingly orchestrated by dear Regina, our angel of mercy. We're grateful that you've joined us today so that we can celebrate Rachel's talent, her memory, and her ongoing legacy, as it's written in her book, We Root, We Leaf. I'm going to read a very short excerpt from an essay on page 49. And it's blizzard in Montreal. Paul is working out of town. Rachel's alone with the boys, and she needs to take them with her to the treatment. My little gentleman shoveled the front walk, brushed off the car, and even shoveled the driveway so that I could get out. We brought movies with us. I actually despise the wah, wah, wah of the TV in the hospital waiting room. Why is it always on the French House of Commons report? But this time it would come in handy. Snacks, movies, kids, and an extra shovel in the trunk. We were all set. We wove through snow, slush, and traffic and made pretty good time, all things considered. I always seem to manage to get to the hospital just as my bladder starts pinging the urgent light. The kids decided to start with Rat Race, and it was perfect for the film for this occasion, as it's a physical comedy, so you don't need sound to appreciate the humor of the story. And then something funny happened. This waiting room that is usually full of crabby-looking people was a room full of people who helped the kids set up the DVD player and then sat there and laughed. I observed the waiting room, and everyone was watching this funny movie. One lady was covering her mouth and laughing. Wow. The kids got overpriced watery fruit juices and ate their snacks. We spent about an hour and a half goofing around this way. Then it was treatment time. When I finished, the boys and I celebrated by sliding our way through downtown Montreal to Chinatown to partake in 2 rounds of dumplings and a rousing 20 questions. We slogged to our favorite Chinese bakery for various buns. Then a few snowballs, back to the car and home. We managed not to get stuck once. But even if we had, I was armed with a shovel and 3 dear and loyal partners who would get us out of there. It was truly a beautiful feeling to see that, yes, I can take care of them, but see how they take care of me too. Okay. So thank you. And it's my absolute pleasure to now introduce Regina Herrera. Regina lives in Kirkland, Montreal, with her husband, Lorne, and her 2 children, Chloe and Logan. Rachel called Regina our angel of mercy, and that is so true. Now and then, she continues to be. So Regina coordinated 60 amazing friends and family members to provide food and different supports to Rachel and her family for over 2 years. So over to you, Regina.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Susan. So as you know, I'm Regina, and I was Rachel's support network coordinator throughout her cancer journey. I like to say that Rachel was all about connections, and the artistic roots and tendrils beautifully depicted on her book's cover are a wonderful representation of that. Connections that buoyed her spirits, sustained her physically, and supported Rachel and her young family, spanning a period of 2 years. Rachel's support community provided various acts of kindness and assistance that included, but wasn't limited to, food. Other assistance included entertaining the kids, driving, or accompanying Rachel, or participating in her Sangha, the Tibetan word for community. The support network sponsored various gifts, and a very poignant group gift came from a fundraiser in 2016 to have Rachel's name engraved in the Cancer Wellness Center's Garden of Inspiration. This was a project brought to my attention by Deanie Nymark, who initially met Rachel at the center's therapeutic writing classes while they both underwent cancer treatment. Another very special year-long gift was a commitment made by Rachel's friend Alana Milgram. She recited the mourner's prayer weekly at Temple after Rachel's passing. This community of support also extended to her professional life. Rachel was Riham Ahmed's mentor and field supervisor at Concordia University. It was Riham's voice that communicated Rachel's lecture when she was unable to speak. Through Rachel, this incredible support network became interconnected in a helpful and deeply moving way, similar to how a tree's deep roots and the soil around it support and sustain the tree, allowing it to bloom. It was the perfect manifestation of how a group of caring and giving people can make a marked difference in someone's life. They say that it takes a community to raise a child, but it also takes one to help a family deal with illness and grief. I first met Rachel in 2011 through volunteer involvement at my children's school. As our friendship commenced, she talked about recently remarrying and taking time off to focus on parenting her children. My jaw literally dropped when she announced, with excitement, I legally adopted 3 boys and am now the mother to 5 boys. And although the eldest 2 were adults living their own lives, 3 still lived at home. The school's library hosted story days, and Rachel and I volunteered to read on the days our little ones, who were about 8 or 9 at the time, would visit with their class. It was during one of those days that Rachel first shared with me her love of writing and deep desire to one day publish her work. Not only did she wish to write, she told me, she hoped to write kids' books too. Our friendship was still in the budding stages when she called me in the spring of 2012 and shared her shocking cancer diagnosis. Rachel's great concern over what would happen to her young family prompted her to ask if I would please help coordinate food for when she would be unable to cook for them. I said, "Of course, Rachel. I will help however I can." Over the next 2 years, food support was scheduled several times a week. Things ran smoothly thanks to the helpers' flexibility and willingness to handle changes and updates. By spring 2013, with treatment behind her, Rachel brainstormed meaningful ways to give thanks to her community, and Project Rockin' Locks was born. She met Anthony Pennanpad, who offered to host the Project Rockin' Locks Fluvog fundraiser at his store in June 2013. With the proceeds from the fundraiser, Rachel bought and donated funky and fun wigs to women dealing with hair loss due to cancer through Can Support. Excuse me. Sadly, in October 2013, Rachel was to receive devastating news that the cancer had returned and had spread. On the evening of March 21, 2014, the school's gymnasium was transformed into a comedy club. Monique Mondor and Hasna Hima, 2 moms from the school, spearheaded a comedy night fundraiser to benefit Rachel and her family. It was an extremely successful event, and although Rachel could not attend in person, she got to enjoy some of it live through Paul's phone. That outpouring of community support would continue until early July 2014, shortly after Rachel's passing. And today, her support community has come together once again to connect to Rachel's legacy, honor her life, and help immortalize her words through this wonderful event hosted by our goddess of ceremonies, Debbie Megwood, and her amazing team at the Cancer Wellness Center. Though Rachel may no longer share our physical plane of existence, many connections that started through her continue to this day. Each time I visit her resting place, read one of her funny essays or deeply touching poems, I think of my connection with Rachel. It is ever present and continues to weave itself deeper into the fabric of the friendship she gifted us. Faced with her illness, instead of retreating, Rachel braved herself, reached out, forged new connections, and reinforced established ones. I'm grateful for her friendship and for the many treasured connections I made through her. It is thanks to that interconnectivity that we are all here. Her bright and shining light made its way into our hearts, where it remains today. And now, I'll briefly introduce our next speaker. One of Rachel's joys in life was imparting her knowledge. And while teaching at Concordia University, she mentored and was field supervisor to Riham Ahmed. So, over to you, Riham.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So Rachel had asked me to speak at her funeral, and I chickened out. Earlier that year, when she got the devastating news of cancer returning again, she wrote a letter to her students and asked me to read it in class because she could barely speak by then. It was the second hardest thing I had to do in my life, the first being carrying her to her resting place. I went to class with her every week, and with the help of her TA, Amanda, she continued teaching the class through her treatments. It was just inspiring to watch her dedication to her students. By then, she had decided to plan her own funeral, a beautiful Jewish ceremony led by a female rabbi, full of surprises, including a Muslim and hijabi pallbearer, me. I didn't say no to that. I think it was the thought of being the last one to hold her that made this so special to me and so deeply ingrained in my memory. I remember trying not to cry and then bursting out to tears when I turned around and saw the rest of the crew tear up. We just held each other tightly and sobbed after we placed her in the hearse. We cried again while walking through the cemetery to the sound of the sacred Torah being read out loud. I remember walking into the funeral home and debating whether I needed to wear another scarf on top of my own hijab or not. I decided not to overdo it. The men wore kippas, regardless of their religion, and the women wore little scarves out of respect. I don't think any of the guests were confused by my presence there. When you knew Rachel, you knew she touched so many lives, regardless of race, religion, or any Middle Eastern conflicts. We talked about this topic often. We fantasized about even telling the world about our love and admiration for each other, about this beautiful friendship between two women, one Jewish and one Muslim. I remember the look on the face of the man attending to the funeral home, the one that let me in. He was surprised, touched, and probably wondering if I knew where I was going. He was even more confused when he asked for the pallbearers to stand next to the casket. And there I went, rushing to fulfill my last duty towards my beautiful friend. Rachel was my teacher first in 2008, actually, then became my mentor and then my friend, and eventually like a second mother to me. Rachel was about doing good in the world, in her work, in her family life, in her friend circle, in all the volunteering that she did. Even during her treatment, her main purpose was just to put a smile on people's faces. She actually dressed up as a superhero and wore funky wigs to go to her treatments. She was not letting it defeat her spirit. Ever since I met her, she took me under her wings and mentored me until her last moments on this earth. While going through her treatments, she was actually my field supervisor in my last year of master's. I watched her work with people who you would never think would accept smelly markers and flip chart paper. She embodied process consultation, open systems thinking, and was a fearless consultant. For those of you in our field, let me tell you why I had a huge brain crush on Rachel right from the beginning. I watched her do a unique design with a group of very serious IT managers and directors, then get them to agree to do a participative design workshop with 130 IT staff from all over the world. Back then, I wasn't in a master's yet, and I had no idea that what I was witnessing was a rare occurrence of OST methods in practice. This all might sound like gibberish to some of you, but just trust me, she was brilliant. I can't seem to have a conversation about work without mentioning her name or her work. I still refer to her projects, to her designs, to her teaching methods, and to her lovely and lively personality. You were not bored with Rachel. I was constantly intellectually stimulated. She had a deep desire to pass on knowledge to the world, and boy, did she do that. I know I'm speaking for hundreds of students and people from who she touched, who were touched by her. She was a beacon of light wherever she went, and her legacy still lives on today through her students. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but reading her book helped me dream of her a lot. Actually, she was often singing to me in my dreams. She was often singing while I basically cried throughout the whole dream. She was always true to her promise to ease others' pain while forgetting her own. She seemed happy. My dear, dear, beautiful friend, my mentor, my idol, my brain crush, I hope you are in a beautiful and peaceful place. I will pass it over to Anthony now, who will introduce himself. He was the one who organized the FLUVAV fundraiser. Back to you, Anthony.
Thank you, Riham. That was very touching. So hi, everybody. My name is Anthony Pennanpad. I am the former manager of John FLUVAG Shoes, their Montreal location. There's a section of the book where Rachel mentions an event between her charity Project Rock and Locks and John FLUVAG. So I was the manager. We worked in collaboration and really made the event take place. So just a little brief introduction of those who don't know John FLUVAG Shoes. So he's a Canadian designer out of Vancouver, notoriously known for fun, funky, wild colors and slightly, you could even say, weird shoe designs. What John FLUVAG Shoes, the company, is really all about is community and building community. So that year, John had himself mandated all the store managers to pick any charity that we'd like and collaborate with them so that we can donate 50% of all the sales during that event that would be held at the store. So what I was looking for was more something on a smaller scale of a charity, something that sort of represented the values that we had at the Montreal store, which was sort of one-on-one, really knowing the customers and the customers. So one day, one random day during the week, in walks Regina with Rachel, and Rachel, of course, was sporting this long pink, hot pink wig about down to here, which I hadn't even noticed actually right up until the end of our discussion, because John FLUVAG is known again for pretty wild designs, and so are the customers. So she was actually telling me that day that she was in the store buying a pair of shoes for her friend Regina, because she had to thank her for all the support that she had given her throughout her treatment. And right away when I was serving Regina and Rachel, there was an instant connection. It was witty off the bat, funny. We were just having a great old time. So towards the end of that event, Rachel bought the pair of shoes for Regina, and she was telling me that she was starting this project called Project Rock and Locks. That was a charity event, and I hadn't chosen my charity yet. So I started jumping up and down and getting all excited. And I asked Rachel if she wanted to collaborate, and she agreed. So we actually didn't have very much time to plan the event. We only had about 3 weeks, but from the get-go, it was just like when I served her. It was fun. It was witty. It was we cracked jokes all the time. I remember we had a few hurdles, but we always confronted them with humor. What we really wanted throughout the event was a party atmosphere. And I think you might have seen the pictures from the slide before that we actually had cutouts of wigs where we'd pass them around and people would put them on their heads, and we'd have a photo booth, man taking pictures. Rachel's massage therapist actually wanted to participate as well, so he brought in his mobile table, and it was giving free foot massages to anybody that was at the event. So it was really a huge success. And like I've already said, it's the best event I've ever probably attended professionally, and by far the best one I've ever had in my whole career. What was really nice was that we were able to raise, I think it was about $2,000 that went directly to buy wigs for women undergoing treatment. So just to conclude, a few words on the book. So I finished reading it and I was alone at home, and I'm not gonna lie, tears were coming down. And I just sat there. I was alone in my house. And I just sat there and was sort of paying attention to my feelings. And it struck me that I said, you know, I'm sure Rachel wouldn't only want emotion to come out of her readers. Especially in my case, it was more of a pity party. So I kept on just focusing on my feelings. And then it hit me, just the overused term appreciative, being appreciative for what you have. And that really stuck with me. So just to conclude, I just want to share an excerpt of an email discussion I was having with Rachel's sister, Susan, last week. I found it really embodied the short time that I interacted with Rachel. So it says, I often dig into memories of Rachel's sense of humor. It was wicked, it was outrageous, and it was brilliant. So I'd like to thank you all for listening. So I pass it over to Bonnie.
Okay, here we are back on track. All right, so thank you, everyone. I'm referred to in the book as the creative artist and the inspired friend, but clearly there are so many of us who are inspired by Rachel and her writing. I'm sure you know this feeling. When we're inspired, it's like we begin breathing the breath of that which has inspired us. It's a gift that becomes part of us. It's in our own lungs and blood, and it's sustenance in our life, and it's part of everything that we do and everything we give to the world. Although I now live in Massachusetts, I lived in Montreal and Beaconsfield for 5 years, where I met Rachel through the elementary school. She inspired me from the moment that I first heard her speak at a school meeting. And when she shared her creative writing with me, it was clear even then that she had something that she needed to say to the world. And I sure hoped that would happen. When Rachel was diagnosed with cancer, I was part of her community of care in Montreal, but about a year later, just as she was emerging from her first battle, I moved with my family to the Boston area. We stayed in touch, and Rachel and her family even visited us that summer. That fall, she got the news that her cancer had returned, and I told her that I would love to help her publish the book that she always wanted to create. So near the end of her final battle, Rachel connected Regina and me with her writing mentor from the Wintergreen Poetry Retreat that she loved, the intensely gifted and warmly generous poet, Lorna Crozier. We brainstormed about creating a multimedia book that was poetry, essays, and emails, and Rachel loved this idea. Soon afterward, Rachel sent us many files and emails, and we were excited to get started. But then, just a few days later, Rachel left this world. Because I was so inspired, my promise to help Rachel publish her words became a real part of me. Going through her writing and pulling together the pieces for this book was a deeply emotional process that took time. I was so blessed to work with Lorna as she edited Rachel's poems, and with 2 other amazingly gifted and deeply generous spirits who have been vital in this project, Rachel's friend Regina and sister Susan. Our team is forever connected because of the soulful and transformative process that we've gone through together. As a visual artist and a graphic designer, I worked to express something of the book's essence in the cover design and the graphics throughout the book. This was my expression of love as I tried to breathe with Rachel's breath in my own way. Can you still hear me? Yes. So there are many themes in Rachel's book that inspire me, but there are 4 that are perhaps the most powerful for me right now. The first is gratitude. Throughout Rachel's writing, there's the familiar dilemma of mindset, to feel sorry for ourselves or to feel grateful. On page 97, she says, "To want what I don't have is a source of suffering, so I'm making every effort to accept what is and find the path to joy, gratitude, beauty, and grace in whatever manifestation life presents itself." Rachel even wrote of feeling grateful for the incredible gift that comes with the horror of facing one's mortality. She wrote of the profound realizations that she wanted to share with the world. She said, "The story needs to be told. I feel this very much." Next is empathy. Throughout Rachel's writing, it's clear that she felt the pain of others, the suffering of other patients and everyone in her life that wanted to see her get better. Her concern and empathy for her family compelled her to reach out and ask for help. She made a point to be a friend to everyone at the hospital. She wrote with humor and awe in her emails, in part to ease our pain. And her wish to publish was infused with her desire to help the suffering that she sensed in the world. In one of my favorite poems, Rear View, Rachel says, "My heart breaks for you when I hit the pylon. I know you've seen it. We'll be first on scene. We'll find nothing left of the me you have known." She describes her own tragic accident, filled with love, care, and empathy for the witness and survivor. Of course, there's joyfulness. As we've already seen and heard, Rachel was full of joyfulness, and in her writing, Rachel conveys the amazing power of joy during difficult times. For oneself, and to help others to open their hearts and take it in and be part of that light. Rachel wrote of deciding to laugh at the small brown mammal in the shower when she began losing her hair. She wrote of staggering around like a moose who's been shot after her surgery. She wrote funny dialogues about awkwardly taking her shirt off, a Borg hole discussion among her different selves, and the radiation machine with whom she had a 6-week fling. Rachel described joyful moments that brightened fearful settings. She wrote about digging deep for her joy as she became the uniquely fashionable Batsu hero, the cancer warrior princess, a character that she said is about love, laughter, camaraderie, awesome driving music, organic lipstick, and paradox, who says, "Go shine, have fun." In her poem, Beyond Hope and Fear There Is, Rachel playfully describes part of her quest for joy. She says, "I braved the sex shops, went where the strippers, the drag queens go, the world of fantasy, the world of the visible, a wig to jazz up my children, whip off for a laugh, suspend the story of my being ill. Let me giggle," she says. Last is vulnerability. Ultimately, I see Rachel as a true artist because she shares her own vulnerability. As a reader, I can be impressed by a writer's skill and their ability to convey ideas, emotions, humor, insight. But for me, it's Rachel's willingness to openly share her fears, struggles, awkwardness, loss, sadness, and her questions and wishes about life's meaning and purpose that makes everything else that she writes deeply touch and move and often tickle my soul. Through her writing, Rachel gives us these glimpses inside her fractured body, where she's shivering and afraid. And then I feel invited to be open and shivering and afraid too. And that shared vulnerability is painful, it's chilling, but it also generates a powerful energy of trust that's genuine and warm. And this trust is what compels me to really deeply breathe in and feel all of the authentic life and love that Rachel so courageously writes about. And so I'm inspired by this book. These messages mean a lot to me, and I'm doing my best to breathe in my own life with the gratitude, empathy, joyfulness, and vulnerability that Rachel and her creative expression have made a part of me and everything that I give to the world. Rachel, I'm so glad that you've published your writing. I love it so much. I want you to know that yes, it is making a difference, and I know it always will. Okay, so now, speaking of true artists, it's now my great honor to introduce our next speaker. One of Canada's most beloved and talented poets, Lorna Crozier, has received numerous awards for her writing. She asked me not to spend too much time listing her many accolades, but know that the list is long. Lorna has published 16 books of poetry, as well as a memoir, 3 children's books, and several collaborative books, to name just a few. Her work has been included in the Globe and Mail's Top 100 Books, and her memoir, Small Beneath the Sky, received BC's award for Best Book of Nonfiction and made Amazon's list of the 100 books that must be read in one's lifetime. Most recently, this past fall, she published a book about the 40 years she spent with her husband, writer Patrick Lane, who died 2 years ago. It's called Through the Garden, a love story with cats. Lorna is inducted into multiple honorary societies and awarded with Lifetime Achievement Awards, the Queen's Medal, and has recited poetry for Queen Elizabeth II. She also holds distinguished and honorary doctorates from 6 different universities. Since the beginning of her career, Lorna has been known for her inspired teaching and mentoring of other poets. As Professor Emeritus at the University of Victoria, she conducts poetry workshops across the country, including at Wintergreen Studios, an off-grid wilderness facility in South Frontenac, Ontario, which is where she met Rachel. I do not have the words to adequately express our gratitude for everything that Lorna has given to this project, to Rachel's voice, and to poets, writers, and readers around the world. It is a great honor to have her here with us. Please welcome Lorna Crozier.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. And there is a beautiful photograph of Wintergreen on the screen, which indeed is where I met Rachel. Thanks for that lovely slide, Bonnie. Whoops, I almost lost Zoom. When things appear on the screen, sometimes my computer cuts out. I'm not sure why. Debbie mentioned earlier that I have to leave, but I've got a good 30 minutes before I have to. Just to let you know the reason. Bonnie mentioned my husband died a couple of years ago, and I belong to a hospice bereavement group. And this is our regular meeting time. It's the last session of 6 sessions, and I didn't want to miss saying goodbye to the other 5 people who have been with me in this group. So they've agreed to delay our meeting by an hour so that I could do this wonderful tribute and this book launch. But that's why I have to leave. It would have to be for an extremely good reason, because I can't think of anywhere I would rather be than where I am right now. I assume that everybody who is attending this knows Rachel, but I try to imagine a stranger who might be listening in, and that person would be going, wow, what a magnificent human being. Look at the light she cast that is still warm on the skin of all of these speakers. As Bonnie mentioned, Wintergreen is a studio in rural Ontario. It's like it's plunked in the middle of a forest at the end of a potholed, windy country road. And it is dedicated to helping people find enlightenment and healing, mind, body, and spirit, and connecting them with the environment, reminding us all that as human beings, we are merely a part of nature, but a part of nature that maybe can correct some of the bad ways we have treated it in the past, and make amends and move forward to nurture the environment rather than chip away at it. I've been lucky to have been involved with Wintergreen for over a decade. And again, as Bonnie said, it's where I met Rachel. She attended a workshop I led in May 2013. And she was one of a group of 12 other women who'd gathered for 4 days to roll around in the wild, scented, prickly meadows of poetry. I didn't know anything about Rachel before she arrived. The organizer, the woman who runs Wintergreen, Rena Eupatis, didn't say a word to me. She was just a name on the list. But boy, did she stand out because of her passion, her fire, and her absolute delight in being exactly where she wanted to be. I didn't know before that she had created an alter ego, a Cancer warrior, but I can tell you in her time with us, she was a poetry warrior. She planned on returning for a second session with me in January. But before that could happen, the cancer returned. She let me know the bad news on email. And dear, enthusiastic, crazy Rachel was even considering trying to shift her latest rounds of chemotherapy so that she would be able to come back to Wintergreen in January. That didn't happen. Her illness took over with more rapidity than she had expected. So she and I decided, since we weren't going to be together in the same spot as mentor and writer again, that we would continue our poetry dialogue online. I promised her that I would edit her poems and that I would be tough, that I wouldn't let her get away with anything because she wasn't well. And it was a handshake across the web that we had. She wanted me to be tough on her. She wanted to be tough on herself. She didn't want to get away with anything that would not hold true and would not have value, not just for the moment, but for moments after. At the January retreat that Rachel could not attend at Wintergreen, it snowed and snowed and snowed for days. I didn't know at the time that Rachel had said to her sister Susan that maybe they would meet again as snowflakes, but it seems to me now to be prescient that she said that, and that we were all thinking of her in Wintergreen when those gorgeous crystals came down and hushed the world. They also blew in the access road to Wintergreen. And the cook who lived on a farm a few miles away couldn't get her truck down the driveway. She had to snowshoe across the fields to cook for us. I knew that Rachel would have absolutely laughed at that, at what we had to go through to sustain ourselves in this world trapped by winter. I have to say that I didn't feel Rachel's presence at that January retreat. What I felt so profoundly was her absence. I lit a candle on the table for her. I read some of the poems and pieces of her emails to the other participants, some who knew her from the May retreat and others who had never met her before. I tried to draw her through her words into the room for us. And at the January retreat, I wrote a poem that at the time, I didn't say, I'm writing this poem for Rachel, or this is all about Rachel, but I think something of her spirit communicated itself to me and found itself in these words. So here's the poem I wrote, called simply January. Wind is not as fond of the aspens as it is in summer, eyelids of leaves opening and closing with a breath. Yet the evening light lingers on these greenless sticks stuck upright in the snow. It tips and spills a wash of rose, each tree in the grove flushed like skin from a bath, the heat held minutes after. As she grows thin, she likes the winter aspens more, not less, stands among them in the cold, absorbs the evening's gloam. Thigh deep in drifts, she raises her arms above her head and sways. She has no kin on either side, in front or back, yet she joins them in their to and fro, their meanwhileness and clatter, as she waits for the day's last light to take her where it wants to go. When it came time for me to edit the poems that became part of this book, Rachel was gone. And so normally when I edit, I make suggestions, I draw arrows and say things. Do you think this line ending could be better? Do you need this phrase? Is the ending working for you? Rachel wasn't there to respond to any of those questions. So what I did was I pretended I was having a conversation with her. I would ask the usual editing questions that I would of someone else I was working with. I sent them out for every poem into the universe on the web, and then I let them sit for a while, hoping that wherever Rachel's spirit was, she could touch on the questions I had asked about her work. And then I went back in and I made the decisions as if she had given me permission. I made the changes, trying to be true to what she wanted to say, trying to be true to her voice and not insert my own. And I felt that I was very close to her in the process of this. It was a privilege to be in her verbal heart, soul presence. I feel like that closeness I discovered in working with her poems in their early drafts. We were all able to bring together between the covers of this beautiful blue book. And I'm going to give you a taste of them by reading a few of the poems. A package at my door. What's in it? My prayer flag, cleaned and restored. A magic box that absorbs all sentimental bits, tags and labels them and stores them in there. An oven that produces meals when needed, like Star Trek's Replicator. Magic anti-nausea drugs with no creepy side effects. Hair options that feel good and don't itch. BBC as yet unmade 6-hour special Pride and Prejudice Part 2, Colin Firth and Jennifer Earle. More coloring pencils. Good news. MRI results that are perfect. An entertainer for the kids, but she won't spoil them. A note that I did have critical life insurance. A query letter from a reputable publisher who wants me to write for them. A perfect chocolate chip cookie. New boobs. Now anything is possible. After they told me I was dead, I allowed myself some time to rest. It had been a long season, so many things to let go, to give thanks for, to remind myself to remember. And then I zipped up my boots and took the old flannel jacket from its peg, walked out into the fields, felt the autumn soil dry in my palm, pushed my heel into some dead grass, the slight spring and crunch. A flock of barn swallows flapped across my line of sight, and I took a deep breath in. headed toward the road, stuck out my thumb and waited. Beyond hope and fear, there is hair. Gorgeous, sexy, voluminous masses, hair that swings, hair that bounces, hair that looks hairier than the hairiest. I surfed the web, braved the sex shops, went where the strippers, the drag queens go, the world of fantasy, the world of the visible. Awake to jazz up my children, whip off for a laugh, suspend the story of my being ill. Let me giggle at men who look right at me. Hope it's not because I put my hair on crooked. Our mouths become still. Our mouths become still like portions of Lot's wife. We'd heard the news, turned back to look at our lives, who we've been, what we've done. The cure would lie in our ability to resist that mournful glance, keep our gazes pointed, not ahead, but right in front. Perhaps we'd find words again. But for now, the stillness sufficed. Bonnie put up a quotation from one of Rachel's emails just before I started speaking. It's when she posed the question, "What can you wish for me?" And most of the wishes she posited did not come true. But this last one did. Wish that I am able to write the books I want to write, and that they make a difference. I think you can tell from what people have said that Rachel's life made a difference. Her teaching, her community work, her mothering, her being a wife, the love she spread everywhere. And you will feel that love in this book and in these poems. I think in a way the book is a manual to teach us how to live, even in times of desperation and crisis. Rachel faced things head on and managed to maintain her zest for living, her zest for language, her zest for loving. I was very moved, Rion, when you said in your dreams, Rachel is singing to you. And I really get a sense right now, especially after having dipped into her book again, that Rachel is singing to all of us. And we just have to open our ears and our hearts to hear her. It's been a real honor to be here. And I particularly want to welcome Rachel's mom, who I understand is a member of the launch, is with us tonight. And thank you for having me and letting me be part of this wonderful event.
Thank you so much, Lorna. That was absolutely beautiful. We do have a question that came from our audience, and they wanted to know if you've edited many books like this.
I'm not sure what the like this means, books by someone who is not with us anymore.
Well, maybe just edited many books.
Yes, I have edited. I have edited many books, but the main place where I put my editing skills right now is in facilitating the kind of workshop that Rachel went to at places like Wintergreen. I actually find that gives more back to me, because I'm sitting with a group of people who have a passion for poetry. And as a poet, that's a treat for me to be in that kind of environment with people who want to learn how to use words well and how to construct this strange little jewel that a poem is and make it shine. So that's where I'm putting my editing eye now, is really in teaching people rather than doing many books. But ironically, I just edited a book for my late husband, Patrick Lane, the same way I did Rachel's books. He left me a manuscript of poetry. And then he died. I had given him comments, but he died before he could make any changes. So I thought, well, I've done this before. I did this with Rachel. Now I'll do it with my dear beloved Patrick. And I again went through the poems and made changes, assuming that he would be okay with what I did. So Rachel gave me the gift of having given me practice in working with a poet who's no longer here, and trusting that you're doing the right thing for them and for their work.
What a beautiful way to honor both Rachel and your husband. Another question that came forward was, how did you decide the order of the book and which poems went where?
I decided the order the way I do for my own poetry books. I spread the poems on the floor and I crawl around on my hands and knees saying this one wants to sit beside this one. And oh, no, this one doesn't like this one as a buddy. It should go over that corner. So it's kind of a matter of tuition and listening to the poems and feeling out where they want to sit and who they want to rub shoulders against.
Were there more poems that didn't make the book? And the second question to that would be, if so, how did you decide which ones was left out? And then the third question would be, is there going to be another book?
I don't think there's going to be another book, but maybe Regina and Bonnie have something else to say about that. I think what we did was compile the best of Rachel. This is her selected, writers have selected poems and selected collections of short stories. And I don't think Rachel would mind that there were poems left out, and there definitely were. They were poems that I didn't think were up to snuff. And again, I do that with my own work. I have a file folder of poems that I don't think are ready to see the world. If I'm lucky, I can return to them and make them better, but Rachel doesn't have that opportunity. So there are just some poems that we keep in a drawer, and I think she would have been quite okay with that, and I hope okay with me making that judgment for her.
Mm-hmm. So the title of the book, We Root, We Leaf. Can you tell us how that came about?
That's over to Bonnie.
Over to Bonnie.
Hello. So it's actually over to myself and to Susan and Regina. I don't know if they want to unmute and also jump in here. The process, so when there was no title for the book, so the way that we handled that was we went through all of her poems and her writing, and we sort of grabbed little pieces that could potentially be titles, and we made this huge list, and then we just had some collaborative conversations where we would talk about one and then kind of sit with it for a while, and then talk about another one and sit with it for a while, and then we would leave the conversation and return to it a couple of weeks later, and we ended up landing on We Root, We Leaf, which is a phrase in one of her poems, My Family Tree. And it just felt like the best way to capture the metaphor that worked for what Rachel was creating with this book and with her life. And so that's how the title came about.
Nice. Does Susan or Regina want to add anything to that?
Well, maybe I'll just add that Rachel's resting place is, there's a beautiful tree right in front of the grave. and it's like it's hugging her. The roots are just holding her. And also in the Garden of Inspiration at the West Island Cancer Wellness Center, Rachel has a plate, and it's a leaf plaque. Regina, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned everything. Not only does, and I will often refer to the tree at her resting place as Rachel's tree. And not only is it hugging her, she's actually sustaining it as well, if I can be so bold as to say that. I had actually asked Paul, I think, whether it was intentional. Did they actually choose that tree? And he had mentioned, well, we kind of said if it's possible, it would be great, but they were never actually confirmed that it would be. And then it was a really cool thing that happened when she was placed right there.
And how about the cover of the book? How was that designed?
So at the end of the book, there is a page that talks about the art of the book. So it gives a better detail probably than I will give right now. But essentially, using that metaphor in kind of brainstorming how to represent Rachel. Her hair was always such an important part of her story, and so the loss of her hair she wrote about, and then her quest for wigs she wrote about, and so that idea of her hair, her dark curly Q hair that she had and that she lost, sort of blended together with this idea of the tree and the roots and the leaves, and it became this visual that has sort of a graphic form. The single pink leaf represents Rachel's vibrant spirit. You know, it's the leaf that represents just being different, seeing things from a different perspective. The cover also having the roots above and the tree below also speaks a little bit to that idea of seeing things upside down or from a different perspective, like Rachel so often did. And on the back cover, as we've seen in a couple of the backgrounds and graphics, but that's the leaf in the wind. That's us carrying her message of joy and vibrancy and resiliency and everything that we get from her words and who she was.
That's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions specifically for Lorna? No? Okay, so Lorna, I think we will allow you to head off to your very important meeting, and we'll continue on asking some questions now. Just on behalf of Bonnie, Regina, Susan, myself from the Cancer Wellness Center, we wanted to thank you profoundly for the time that you've given us.
Hugs to everybody. Thank you. Bye.
I'll just reiterate, I just thanked Lorna for her time and for being with us, and told her that on behalf of all of us, she made the event a beautiful thing. So I'll move on to a couple more questions that did come in. What was the process of publishing the book?
Bonnie,
Is that me?
you're in the hot seat. I think Susan and I can chip in, but
Yeah, of course. I won't go into too many details. It was a very emotional and convoluted process, but you know, we had a lot of conversations about the format for the book and how to arrange it. The chronological part, the first half is chronological, the second half is the poetry, which is non-sequential. Eventually, you know, we were just basically looking to self-publish, to do an independent publishing. And we're able to do that best in an international way through Amazon. So the book is available at amazon.ca, amazon.com. It's available at Amazon and many other countries as well. So that's just sort of the technical, logistical process. Finding, connecting with Debbie and the West Island Cancer Wellness Center was a big part of just how we wanted the book to live and raise funds for a cause that mattered to Rachel. So that was a piece of the publishing process. I don't know, Regina, Susan, do you want to add anything in there?
Susan?
No, go ahead.
Also that, as you said, Bonnie, it was an emotional process. It's kind of organic. It didn't have, we didn't really have a set beginning and a set end. It started several years ago, actually, and we would have lots of activity for a period of time, and then we would go for a certain period of time. We would get busy in our lives and not communicate, and then we'd pick it up again and continue with it. So it was kind of it was an organic process that had different seasons to it, shall we say. and this is a wonderful, this is the summer of that process, if I can call it that, and it's bearing fruit now through the publishing of her book.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to just send it over to Susan to give some final words and for some thank yous. But before I do, I just wanted to say that Rachel was frequently at our little yellow house in Beaconsfield when we first began the Cancer Wellness Center. And she attended an amazing journal writing course with Leslie. And I think what fascinated me the most about Rachel was the fact that she always came in with these vibrant wigs. And we would all look forward to when Rachel was going to come in next. And it would create like a group of staff in the library waiting for her to come in the door, because we always wanted to see what color her hair was that week. So Rachel has a very, very, very special place that is rooted in our hearts at the West Island Cancer Wellness Center. So Susan, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to share some words from Chris Krajewski. So Rachel was my stepmother and my friend for over 20 years. She was a beautiful, illuminating light. This is how I imagine her now, a beautiful light swirling around us wherever we reach out to her. I reach out to her often, and I feel her presence. My relationship with Rachel taught me so much about love, compassion, and self-acceptance, and it was one of the most important relationships in my life. She encouraged me, loved me, and supported me. I looked up to her. I admired her strength and vulnerability. She let people in. Sometimes this led to positive relationships in her life, and sometimes it didn't. But she never let any experience dim her love of life and possibility. Rachel loved being a mother. It often made us laugh that we really did view each other as stepdaughter and stepmother, though we were barely 3 years apart. When she adopted her 3 sons, she took on the role of mother with fervor and love, as she did all things. It made sense to me. It was Rachel's fate to be a mother and to share her love in this way. Today, I have 3 stepdaughters of my own. I feel as though this happened in part so I could share this experience with Rachel, and I'm ever so grateful. I recently read that dying is like a ship spreading her sails and taking to sea. You stand on the shore and watch as this majestic ship sails farther away. It becomes smaller and smaller until it's gone from your sight. Yet, though you can no longer see it, there's another shore on the other side. For those standing on this shore, the ship is only coming closer and getting larger, still as majestic as when it left you. It was a privilege and joy to know Rachel on this side of the sea, and it will be a privilege and a joy when we meet again. Thank you, Chris, for those touching words. Okay.
Thank you, Susan. I would just like to maybe mention the Garden of Inspiration. It's a tribute garden, both in memory and in honor, that people over the last couple of years have decided to name people. For example, I named my children who played a huge role in my life and are still playing a huge role in my life. So I honored them in the garden the way that Rachel was honored by her friends and family. So if you do have anybody you love, who you would like to honor in our garden and you'd like to give back to the Cancer Wellness Center, please feel free to go to our website. It's wicwc.org. And you can donate there and specify it to the Garden of Inspiration. Or if you want to honor Rachel again, you can do that again. At this point, we have no more questions to go to the audience. So what we'd like to do is we would like to offer anybody who wants to say a few words about Rachel or want to speak their thanks, because we're getting tons of thank yous in the chat box for you all. If you want to open your microphone and speak, then you can do it now. Just know that this broadcast is being taped, and we will probably cut it off at this point. But we will keep your tributes for her friends and family. So again, thank you all for attending, and I open it up to anyone that would like to say anything. Thank you for sharing We Root, We Leaf, a book by Rachel Devins.
And could I begin just to say some formal thank yous? So I would like to say that I've really appreciated working so closely with Bonnie and Regina to publish Rachel's book. Every detail has been considered in an incredibly respectful and soulful way. Our huge thanks to Lorna for connecting with Rachel in a deep and profound way to express herself through her writing and later to guide and mentor. And our thanks to Wintergreen for providing the perfect environment to cultivate these gifts. So to acknowledge and thank Lorna, we've created a Rachel Devins and Lorna Crozier retreat writing bursary for someone to study at Wintergreen. And I'd like to thank everybody on the launch who's here and those who are supporting the West Island Cancer Wellness Center too. Debbie, we are so appreciative that you have guided us technically with your ceremony of goddess wisdom and experience, and your whole team at the West Island Cancer Wellness Center. And please check out Lorna Crozier's website. It's fun, it's funky, it's beautiful. And I really want to highlight Bonnie's artwork. Bonnie, you're a true artist. You are so humble, but we love your artwork. And the Wintergreen Studios, and of course, John Fluvog stores. We have one in Edmonton. So now back to you, Debbie, for the sharing. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm actually not going to take over now. I'm just going to allow you to individually unmute yourself and share anything that you need to share. At this point, I will bid you an adieu and allow you all to just experience each other. Bye-bye.
Can I say something? So my name is Deirdre, and I met Rachel through HSI. She was in the program year just 1 year ahead of me, and I didn't have that many interactions with her, but the interactions that I had were so intense and so profound that she truly left a mark on my psyche. And Reham, listening to you talk about her just brought it all flooded back to me. Like there are, you know, when you meet people in your life and you don't have to spend a lot of time with them, but they have a really big impact on you. And Rachel was one of those people for me. She was so intelligent and so happy and so creative and so insightful, so emotionally intelligent. She said really profound things that mattered in a very short period of time. And I just wanted to acknowledge that she was just so wonderful. And I bought her book and I spent a whole day sitting in my family room in my favorite big chair in the sunny window. And I literally sat there for 8 hours and just read and cried and thought about her. And it was very intense and very powerful. And I just wanted to thank you all. And Susan, when you came on, you took my breath away. I actually thought you were Rachel. It really freaked me out a little bit because I just thought, oh my God. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you all. This was so lovely. And I'm a very shy person. I don't usually speak at things like this, but it was very powerful for me. And I just wanted to really thank you all.
Thank you so much, Deirdre. I'm going to jump in. I saw that Ilana is with us. She was the friend that I referred to that said the mourner's prayer after Rachel's passing. And I think she might be ready to speak.
Yes, I would love
Ilana?
to. Yes, so it is, I share everybody's sentiments about how wonderful and heartwarming and how much reading this book brings her back. And I also had a moment. I was in my car and I was driving to work, and it's a much longer drive than it used to be because we recently moved. We just bought a house. And in addition to all of the wonderful esoteric and creative energies that Rachel had, she was also a very deeply practical woman. And I couldn't help but think that she would approve of a house purchase. And that feeling was so intense that it was like she was sitting right there beside me in the car that I exclaimed and I laughed out loud. And I thought, wouldn't Rachel love to be a ghost? And thank you all for sharing that and being part of it. And as Lorna said, she is the light. The light that she cast is still warm on my skin. And I see that with all of you tonight. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilana. I'm sorry I'm going to jump in again. My trusty hubby, who's by my side, noticed that one of our attendees was asking for the link. Natalie, I believe you had asked for it. It's right there. If you're still with us, then you can access it. It's in the chat box. Thanks, Bonnie.
You're welcome.
Thanks for sharing, Ilana.
Hi, I wonder if I could share for a moment. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, I'm seeing heads. Okay, my name's Bailey. I'm a family member, I guess a cousin of Rachel's. I live in Winnipeg. And I don't even know where to begin, but I've been looking forward to this event with a mixture of anxiety and excitement. And I have the book and I've been I held on to it for a while, kind of not ready to open it. And when I finally did what Deirdre had shared about just consuming it, and I spent a couple of hours on the couch just reading it and hugging it and stopping, and it just was a really very intense and beautiful experience to go through that. And it reminded me so much of the email conversations and in-person conversations that I was able to share with Rachel. and so living in different cities, we saw each other only a couple of times in person. When I was 16 years old, I took a trip by myself to Montreal to visit Rachel for a week. And I was like so excited to go by myself. And I had met Rachel once before. And so I was kind of not sure what to expect. And she picked me up in this convertible car and she said, "I'm sorry in advance, I'm putting this babushka on my head to protect my hair." And she was just kept saying, "I don't want to embarrass you." And I said, "I think this is hilarious. You're so cute. Great. Do you have another one?" And so it started off our visit with just this. She was just so whimsical, and it was just everything she did was just so cute and just romantic, and everything about her she just shaped. It was a time in my life when you're 16 years old, you want to meet someone like her. And I remember going to her house and her little cat, baby kitty, and I remember going to the kitchen to get a glass of water, and in her cupboards in the kitchen, she had poetry on the inside of each cupboard. And I just remember thinking that this is like, it was just like beautiful and romantic, and everything about her, she felt so much and she lived so much. And I just feel really thankful to be able to share and to hear the same experiences from others that have been touched by her. And thank you so much for putting this together and for capturing her essence in this book. It's so special to me, and she's so special to me. And I know that to see all of the faces of all the other people that share that sentiment, it's really special for me. So thank you.
I can't even describe how amazing this is to hear everyone sharing. I'm so happy right now. Thank you to everyone who is using this part of this event to share your story and to share your response to the book. It's really incredible. I'm so moved by it all. So thank you. If there's anyone else, please. It's such a good feeling.
Hello, I'm Zian. I met Rachel as we were working together with the Consulate of Japan quite a few years back. There's a line that really stays with me when I think of Rachel, and it rings very true tonight. She used to say, "Joy has yet to erase itself." And that's something that just kept coming back to me as I was listening to every single one of you. So thank you for this event tonight. I'm really grateful I joined. I'm really happy about it. Thank you. Hi, Regina.
I'd like to say a few words. I'm a business colleague of Rachel, and I was also blessed to be part of the group that Regina put together to help with meals. I lived a long distance, eventually in Calgary, but Rachel was always very much a part. And in fact, doing a computer search, I have found so many emails and so many things that are still on my computer from Rachel. In fact, the one that was her last day before her leave left. And I was lucky enough to be in the same city a few times and went out with her colored wigs, and she touched my heart in a very special way. I was lucky to be a bit of a mentor for her, and just a unique personality. And I feel blessed that when I do go to Montreal to visit family graves, they're all buried right next to Rachel. So Rachel is part of my yearly trek to Montreal to visit very special people. And so I know that I will be connected to Rachel for years going forward. And thank you all for this wonderful tribute.
Okay, does anybody else have any other words they want to share?
Yes, I would like to thank everyone and just say thank you for the many faces I see that I haven't seen in a long time. This is very emotional for me. Thank you to all of Rachel's friends and to Rachel's relatives. Bless you.
Thank you very much. I think that is the most beautiful way to end this evening's event. I wish you all wellness and please be safe. Have a nice evening.